понимаешь, что здесь будет происходить.
Двух недель мы там находились. Приехал Хабиб тоже на сборы. Чуть нарушил начало сборов. Вообще без никакой акклиматизации мы сразу начали пахать.
All week I was pushing them. I leave weekend. I just come back for next 5 days. For me it's gonna be fun day. For them it's gonna be very hard days.
В этом плане, да, он универсальный боец, и я жду того боя, где он себя покажет в этом плане.
Мне нормально, если балл я не отдам, взять не обязательно. У меня это есть понятие, как там делать. В голове получается, там не получается.
Islam Makhachev's camp has reportedly reached a new level of intensity as UFC 330 approaches, with Khabib Nurmagomedov once again playing a key role in preparation. His presence immediately raises the stakes, bringing the same disciplined, pressure-heavy system that defined his undefeated career. This time, Islam faces Ian Garry, a tall, technical welterweight who presents a very different challenge. Gary's size and range mean Islam can't afford slow entries or hesitation. Every takedown attempt has to be calculated. But there's also a bigger picture behind this fight. Islam is now just one win away from tying Anderson Silva's UFC win streak record. That adds pressure beyond just game planning, it's about legacy. Every round in this camp carries extra weight. With Khabib involved, training has reportedly become sharper and more focused on control, pressure, and eliminating mistakes. Still, the key question remains, can Islam close the distance early against a longer opponent like Ian Garry and impose his wrestling before the fight turns into a striking battle? Because if he can, this isn't just another win, it's history in motion.
Ты пока уставший, он все же аккуратно найди свою дистанцию. Когда ты настроишь, уже имей в виду, что ты должен с ноги бороться.
This immediately opens the door to a deeper technical layer in Islam Makhachev's mindset going into this fight. He's not just looking at Ian Garry as a standard striking challenge, he's studying him as a rhythm-based problem inside the cage. Gary's movement, timing, and ability to stay unpredictable make him difficult to replicate in training. That kind of style forces a fighter like Islam to constantly adjust his entries instead of relying on static patterns. But interestingly, Islam also makes a clear contrast when comparing Garry to Michael Morales. In his view, Morales represents a more complete MMA package, someone with stronger wrestling foundations and more consistent forward pressure. That difference matters, because it highlights how Islam is mentally categorizing opponents, not just by name or hype, but by structural threat level. And this is where the real tactical question emerges. Against Garry, the challenge is timing and distance management. Against someone like Morales, it becomes a battle of control and physical resistance. So even in his analysis, Islam is already mapping out where the danger actually lies, and where he believes he can impose his own system. Islam Makhachev then takes his breakdown a step further, shifting from stylistic matchups to a deeper truth about MMA development itself. He emphasizes that elite-level skills, especially wrestling and takedown defense, aren't something you can fully fix in a short training camp. Even with focused preparation, once a fight starts under pressure, gaps in grappling tend to reappear. In his view, recent examples like JDM being repeatedly taken down highlight how difficult it is to completely shut down a world-class grappler once the chain wrestling begins. This reinforces Islam's core belief. Late adjustments inside camp have limits when facing elite-level control on the mat. But there's also a strategic layer to how he looks at future opponents. From a legacy perspective, Islam suggests he would find a fight with the undefeated Michael Morales more valuable than a matchup with Ian Garry. Logic is simple, beating an unbeaten fighter adds more weight to his resume. In contrast, Garry already carries a recent loss, which slightly reduces the historical impact of that win in Islam's eyes. So beyond just tactics, Islam is thinking in terms of legacy, records, and long-term significance, choosing challenges that would define his place in UFC history.
Сложности в его стиле.
Да, у него сложный стиль. Постоянно убегает, назад идет, отступает постоянно, его все прижимают. Такой не сказать, что он не зрелищный соперник. Есть еще вот в плане того, что для зрелищности боя тот же Моралес умеет бороться, тот же Моралес нападает сам, но нападает это точно неправильно.
Inside the coaching structure, Javier Mendez adds another layer to the overall game plan by breaking down Ian Garry's striking profile. He describes Garry as a long-range, technical striker who is comfortable creating awkward timing exchanges on the feet. His movement and distance management can disrupt rhythm, forcing opponents to reset instead of committing cleanly to attacks. But the key difference, according to Mendez, begins the moment the fight leaves striking range. Once grappling exchanges come into play, he believes Islam Makhachev's control becomes the defining factor. In those positions, Garry's ability to dictate where the fight happens drops significantly, and the momentum shifts toward Islam's chain wrestling and positional pressure. So while Garry may have tools to make the striking uncomfortable early, the coaching view is clear. The deeper the fight goes into grappling exchanges, the more it tilts in Islam's favor.
Я отрабатываю защиту от проходов. Надо ли тебе отрабатывать, я не знаю, стойку для того, чтобы, в случае чего...
Именно да, собственно, проходы надо отрабатывать больше. Я уже говорил и повторюсь, что это так не работает. За 3-4 до полгода невозможно бороться научиться. Этот Мандалена тоже очень много отрабатывал, кого-то привлекал, там весь кемп готовился. Ну, я бы не знаю, сколько, 5 попыток и 5 переворотов было.
Javier Mendez continues his assessment by acknowledging Ian Garry's biggest threat on fight night, his striking unpredictability. He explains that Garry's timing and ability to create sudden offensive bursts can change the momentum of a fight in a single exchange. That kind of danger is what makes him a legitimate problem on the feet, especially early when distance and rhythm are still being established. However, Mendez draws a sharp line when the fight transitions to grappling. In his view, Garry would be forced into survival mode once taken down rather than being able to control those positions. He suggests that Garry's takedown defense is not consistent enough to repeatedly stop Islam Makhachev's entries, especially over the course of multiple rounds where pressure builds. Also highlights an important detail about Islam's preparation itself. According to Mendez, Islam doesn't train for one specific opponent, he trains for complete MMA scenarios. The focus is on universal control across striking, wrestling, and transitions, which is exactly why he believes Islam is effective in every phase of the fight. While Garry may pose danger in bursts on the feet, the coaching belief is clear. The longer the fight stays mixed or goes to the ground, the more it shifts into Islam Makhachev's world.
Garry, he's a bit of a weird one, right? Like, he's a difficult guy to fight, a difficult guy to look good against. He's long, he's rangy, he's pretty strategic in there. How do you feel like he matches up with Islam Makhachev?
He does well with Islam on the stand-up because he's rangy, he's tricky, all those. But on the ground, he doesn't. He does okay, but he doesn't survive on the ground, I don't think. I mean, well, okay, he might survive 5 rounds, but he won't get the best of Islam on the ground. That I'm 100% sure. Stand-up, he's pretty tricky. So one punch can change everything on that. One kick, one punch, one knee. So that's a different story. But on the ground, I don't see him dominating. I see him surviving, possibly. So yeah, I could see that. And then the takedown defense that he has is decent, but not great enough to stop Islam from taking him down. But again, sometimes we'll go in there and we'll decide that we're gonna do this with Islam, and next thing you know, next round we'll say, okay, take him down now, or next thing you know, next round we'll go stand up, because he's that good. So we're not looking at going in any specific game plan for anybody, because he's good everywhere. He's good everywhere. So, I've said it too many times, and I think people should remember some of my back interviews. And if they look at that, then they go, we're not going to prepare for Ian Garry per se. We'll just prepare for an MMA fight, and Islam is good everywhere. So he'll...
That discussion then expands into broader external analysis, where Chael Sonnen begins questioning whether Ian Machado Garry truly has the complete skill set required to dethrone a champion like Islam Makhachev. Sonnen breaks it down from a realistic fight IQ perspective, highlighting how difficult it is to construct a clear, repeatable path to victory against someone with Islam's control, discipline, and consistency across all phases of MMA. At the same time, he doesn't completely shut the door on the upset. Instead, he points out that in a high-level matchup like this, victory for Garry would likely require near-perfect execution, flawless distance management, sharp defensive responsibility, and capitalizing instantly on any small mistake. Anything less would allow Islam to drag the fight into his preferred grappling rhythm. So the debate ultimately sits in a narrow space, not whether Garry has talent, but whether he can sustain perfection long enough to survive a full fight against one of the most system-based champions in the sport.
Can Islam beat Garry? Can Garry beat Islam? Are you guys sold enough on Ian Garry that he can go out and become the champion of the world? Do you believe that in your heart? Yeah, I think that guy can beat Islam. Okay, tell me how he's going to beat him. Is Ian Garry going to try to revive Conor and Khabib and do it with himself through Islam? It's very possible.
Adding another layer to the fight week tension, Carlos Prates enters the picture by revealing that he has already begun preparing as a potential backup fighter. His mindset is simple but demanding: stay in shape, stay sharp, and be ready to step in at any moment if either Ian Garry or Islam Makhachev is forced out of the main event. That kind of preparation adds a quiet pressure of its own. Backup fighters don't just train normally, they have to stay mentally locked into two completely different opponents while never knowing if they'll actually compete. In this case, it means preparing for a high-level striker like Garry while also being ready for the wrestling-heavy system of Islam. It also subtly raises the stakes of the main event itself, because knowing a fully prepared backup is waiting in the shadows changes how camps approach risk, recovery, and even sparring intensity in the final weeks before fight night.
I really think, like, I heard people saying like that fight gonna happen, 15 August. And also I talked with my coach, like after Netherlands we're going to Hungary, and after Hungary I'm gonna back to Brazil and I'm gonna start the fight camp to fight 15 August, because I know something happened with Makhachev or Ian, they're gonna call me and I'm gonna be ready.
Did you talk to the UFC about being the backup fighter yet?
No, I didn't talk, but I know, like, I'm the number 2 on the rank.
Yeah, true, but some fighters
they don't need to call me. Like, I saw something happen, I say, hey, I'm here. No, I'm doing the fight camp. I just saw the guys who are gonna bring to the fight camp, really good grapplers to help me on the fight camp. I have like 8 weeks. It's a good time to.
Coming back to Islam Makhachev versus Ian Garry, Georges St-Pierre frames the matchup in its simplest but most dangerous form: striker versus grappler. Highlights Garry's biggest weapon, his stand-up game, range control, and ability to keep opponents guessing on the feet. On the surface, that creates moments where he can absolutely shift momentum if he finds his timing early. But GSP also makes the key distinction that defines this fight. Once the fight transitions into grappling exchanges, Islam's control becomes the deciding factor. In those positions, the risk isn't just being taken down, it's being stuck there, forced to defend, reset, and slowly lose rounds under constant pressure. And that's where the real question sits. Can Garry keep the fight standing long enough to matter, or does it inevitably drift into Islam's world where control decides everything?
To test Islam, who will be going for his 17th straight UFC win, trying to break Anderson Silva's record, which he's currently tied with.
Oh wow, yeah, that's wow. I think it's gonna be a good fight. Ian Garry, it's definitely a tough opponent, very good striker. But Islam once again is gonna be, his goal gonna be to bring the fight to the ground, and I think if he's able to do that, he's gonna have an edge. If Ian Garry is able to keep it on the feet, and Ian gonna have an edge, so it's gonna be interesting.
Stephen Thompson also adds another important layer to the discussion, focusing on just how draining Islam Makhachev's style can be over the course of a fight. He explains that Islam doesn't necessarily overwhelm opponents in a single moment. Instead, he breaks them down gradually. The constant pressure, clinch work, and positional control start to accumulate round by round until fighters are not just physically tired, but mentally exhausted as well. According to Thompson, that's what makes Islam so difficult to deal with. Even when opponents start strong, the pace and control begin to strip away their energy and confidence as the fight progresses. He emphasizes that beating someone like Islam would require more than just skill on the feet. It demands elite cardio, strong recovery between exchanges, and the ability to consistently get back to striking range without getting stuck in grappling sequences. In other words, it's not just about surviving moments, it's about surviving the entire system he imposes over time.
Islam, he's the type of guy to make a fight very, very, very grueling to his opponent, right? Yeah. Guys like Islam, guys like Khabib, they try to break your spirit. They break you physically, mentally, and emotionally out there, right? It gets to the point where when you see guys fight them, halfway through the fight, these guys are looking for a way out. They're like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm not saying they're doing this, but it almost looks like they just turn their back just to get choked out and get out of there, right? Because they all do that. For a coach, their cardio, they have to be mentally, physically, emotionally.
Meanwhile, Islam Makhachev has also spoken about his long-term mindset as champion, adding another layer to the conversation around his career trajectory. He emphasizes that his goal is to retire while still holding the belt, which reflects how focused he is on finishing his journey at the very top rather than fading out over time. Islam describes enjoying every phase of being a champion, from the disciplined training camps to the pressure of fight night performance. At the same time, he keeps his timeline intentionally open-ended, showing that while the goal is clear, he isn't rushing the exit. Instead, he's letting his performances and body of work define when that final chapter arrives. It's a mindset that ties directly back into everything around him right now, because every fight, every camp, and every win isn't just about the present, it's also part of a controlled exit at the peak of his legacy.
Мне вот на данный момент важно, чтобы я ушел непобежденным. Ну, непобежденным, не проиграть пояс и уйти в статус чемпиона. Но не знаю, когда это случится, потому что нравится быть в статусе чемпиона, нравится, вот, как я уже говорил, быть в форме, тренироваться, драться, вот так с ребятами выезжать. Пока мне это приносит удовольствие. Ну, вот, отдыхал я сейчас 3 месяца, там 2-3 месяца был в разъездах, везде покатался. Это все быстро надоедает. Так и будет после завершения карьеры. Поиграю я этот падал, мотоцикл, лошади, там на ферму. Надоест же это все когда-то. Ну, вот это тем, чем ты занимался всю жизнь, это ты.
On the other side of the UFC landscape, Justin Gaethje reflects on what he calls a magical performance at UFC 250, where everything seemed to click in his favor against Ilia Topuria. Gaethje credits his success to something deeper than just physical execution. He believes he disrupted Topuria's expectations inside the fight. Instead of entering with rigid assumptions about how the bout would unfold, Gaethje approaches fights with a flexible mindset, reacting moment by moment rather than trying to control every outcome in advance. That mental approach, according to him, is what keeps him composed during chaos. While many fighters can mentally break when exchanges don't go as planned, Gaethje feels his lack of expectation prevents that kind of psychological collapse. As the fight progressed, he noticed a shift. Topuria, in his view, began to struggle as the rounds went deeper, where Gaethje's pressure, pace, and forward momentum started to take over. The intensity of his approach created a situation where he felt he was dictating the rhythm, forcing reactions rather than responding to them. And that's the key contrast he draws from the performance. While others try to predict fights, he thrives in unpredictability, using constant pressure to gradually overwhelm opponents as the fight unfolds.
It's happening so fast. We're like computers processing codes, and you're constantly making adjustments. And what really happened, I was able to reset his feet every 1 to 2 seconds. I was very diligent about it, and I fought a perfect fight. He was completely caught off guard. He was not expecting it. You know, that obviously is another part of this whole game, is the expectations. I've said it many times. I don't go in with the expectations, so that way I can never, be surprised. And that's just the way I compete. And, he took the opposite approach, and I said it before on your show, when we go to 2, when we go to 3, you're going to be in hell. And that's where
Justin Gaethje also reflects on what it meant to finally become a champion, and interestingly, he admits the moment didn't fully register at first. In the chaos that follows a title win in the crowd, the emotion, the exhaustion, he says he didn't immediately process the significance of what he had achieved. It wasn't until his father pointed it out that the reality started to sink in, and that's when it hit him. Once he slowed everything down mentally and truly reflected on it, the feeling of holding the championship became something much deeper than just a win. It turned into a personal milestone, years of pressure, setbacks, and wars inside the cage, all culminating in a single moment of recognition. For Gaethje, that realization made the achievement even more meaningful, because it wasn't just about winning the belt, it was about finally understanding what it represented. Justin Gaethje's performance ultimately added another layer to the event's legacy, elevating its overall impact and making the night more memorable for both fans and commentators. The intensity of his fight, combined with the emotional weight of his journey, helped define the card as more than just a series of bouts. It became a collection of defining moments that stood out under pressure. Joe Rogan also reflects on the chaos and energy of the entire event, emphasizing how the atmosphere inside the arena, along with the standout performances across the card, contributed to something special unfolding in real time. In his view, it wasn't just one fight that made the night iconic, it was the combination of violence, skill, momentum shifts, and unexpected outcomes that locked it into UFC history as one of those events fans remember long after it ended.
I know yesterday my dad asked me, he's like, how's it feel, waking up first time being a champion? And I was like, I haven't even thought about it. And I was, sat there and thought about it. And yeah, it's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Like, it's just insane.
And it was insane. And you could hear them roar. So you hear the crowd from here, and then you hear 85,000 people. And it's fucking rah! You could hear it in the distance. It was insane. I'm a hyperbolic individual, and I'm always like, this is the greatest, this is awesome. Like, that was the wildest experience that I've ever had in my 20 whatever years of calling combat sports. There's nothing even close. Nothing even close. It was the greatest night of fights of all time. The main event was the greatest fight of all time. It literally was the greatest fight of all time.
Joe Rogan frames Justin Gaethje going into the fight as a massive underdog on paper, despite his elite credentials, including an interim title and the symbolic BMF championship. He notes that Ilia Topuria was widely viewed as part of the new generation of MMA, cleaner, sharper, and more technically refined, while Gaethje represented a more chaotic, battle-tested style built on violence and durability rather than textbook structure. Rogan breaks down how the fight dynamics began to shift after the opening exchanges, where both fighters landed heavy shots and immediately established that neither was willing to back down. The early intensity set the tone for a brutal, high-output contest. However, he explains that Topuria's aggressive push to force a finish early began to backfire. As he increased his output and looked to close the fight quickly, he started to expend more energy than he could sustain at that pace. That opening allowed Gaethje to recover, reset, and slowly drag the fight into deeper waters. At that point onward, his pressure, durability, and constant forward presence began to take over, as he accumulated damage and controlled the momentum in the later rounds.
A 6-1 favorite, 6-1 underdog rather, which is crazy odds for a guy that was a interim lightweight champion, fought the best of the best, one of the best to ever do it, BMF champion. I mean, just super durable, real dangerous guy, and that's how good Ilia Topuria is. That's how good Ilia Topuria is. Ilia Topuria, in many people's eyes, is the most skilled of the new generation, and the new generation is the most skilled of all time. And Ilia was like the top of the mountain, and most people thought that he was going to be too much, and he was too much for a while, and he almost took Justin out in the second round, and then Justin rallied, and then Ilia, it looked like he got really damaged in either the first or the second round, and he was having real trouble seeing out of one of his eyes, and then Justin started landing bombs in the third round. Ilia had slowed down quite a bit. It looked like he had really tried to finish Justin in the second, and sometimes when you try to finish a guy, you just hit the gas way too much and you can't recover in between rounds. And Justin recovered, and Justin started battering Ilia in the third and fourth, and by the end of the fourth round, Ilia quit on his stool.
If you want more deep breakdowns like this, subscribe and stay tuned. There's a lot more coming from the MMA world.